What's up, Mrs. Beeson?
Welcome to Lightbox, the
Hurrah!
official cast of WAnimate, the West Australian Anime Studios Association. Whether you're an aspiring animator, a seasoned professional, or simply a fan of the magical world of animation, you've come to the right place. My name is Tanya.
I'm David O'Connell.
And I'm Lindsay Flay. Hello,
Hi.
everybody.
There we
Hey.
go. Oh,
Yes.
back to our slides.
Whoa.
There we go.
Colour.
Oh,
The things
in
they do
colour.
these days.
Yeah, it's amazing. Each month, Lightbox will bring you the latest and greatest in animation news, from upcoming films and shows to industry discussions that will inspire and empower the talented animators who call Western Australia home. And there's a lot of them. We also delve into the creative processes and challenges faced by our local animators as they work tirelessly to bring their unique visions to life. So buckle up and get ready to be amazed as we explore the vibrant, ever-evolving world of West Australian animation. This is Lightbox, and we're just getting started. We do wish to acknowledge and honour the traditional custodians of the land we are streaming from, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We recognise and celebrate their enduring culture, the rich tapestry of Indigenous arts, and the invaluable contributions they make to the vibrancy and cultural diversity of this city and region.
Okay. And before we dive into today's content, I would like to issue a quick advisory warning. While our channel is generally suitable for most audiences, we may on occasions delve into topics and showcase content that might not be appropriate for younger viewers. We strive to create an appropriate, enjoyable content for everyone, but please be advised that some material may not be suitable for the younger children. Parental discretion, therefore, is advised, and we encourage you to review the content before sharing it with younger audiences. Our goal is to provide a safe and enjoyable viewing experience for all, and we appreciate your understanding and support in this.
Woohoo!
Thank you, Dave.
Nice. Hi.
Hello.
Okay,
G'day.
big topic today, and a bunch of things to talk about. So let's dive straight into it.
All right.
Okay, and we're going with sad news first for a lot of different things. So we've had the passing, since we've been last on air, of Brian Truman. He passed away at 92, best known as one of the writers for Danger Mouse, and also Count Dracula as well. So yeah, we're talking.
You can see what they modelled Danger Mouse on, can't you?
Yeah. So we also lost our voice actress Asuko Tanaka, so she's known for her work in Ghost in the Shell, Naruto, and I'm going to mispronounce Jujutsu Kaisen. She passed away at 62, and we lost Flea. Best known for his work with the Wild Four. Well, best known for his work with Jane's Addiction, but
I would have said the Red Hot Chili Peppers. But...
Oh, sorry, I meant Red Hot Chili Peppers. I just went Jane's Addiction automatically. Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Have we got to the stage of our decrepit aging lives that now we are starting to lose Red Hot Chili Peppers to old age?
Yeah, well, it's Flea, so I didn't look up the cause of death, but yes. So yeah, but I was going to say Wild Thornberrys and Inside Out as well. These work too.
Okay.
Jane's Addiction.
Don't worry, kids, it's coming.
We keep saying younger people. We want younger people for this.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, at least someone under 40. Anyway.
Indeed.
Okay. Also,
give the good news, Tanya.
woohoo! So Eureka is releasing a remastered version of The Secret of Nim on Blu-ray in December. It's going to be so good. So
orders are out on their website already. So
was it Bluth's first film post Disney?
It was one of them.
It's probably his major work. I don't know if it's his first post Disney.
I would have thought most people would have associated him with his stuff he did with Spielberg, American Tail or whatever it was.
Oh, really?
I mean that was the mainstream.
What's the best mouse animation of all time?
Well, I think this one would be.
People are probably going to say Secret of Nim. Maybe. Trying to think if there's anything else.
That's for sure. So,
it's not Rival. That being said, Rival's pretty
good.
Yeah.
God, it's been so long since I've seen it. I can't even remember.
Well, you can have the opportunity. Grab it in physical media.
I might just do that. I'm getting back into physical media these days. Thanks, streaming. That's
Eureka is, I believe it's an English distributor, but that's okay for Blu-ray because same format. So you should be fine.
All right. What do we got here?
Well, The Wild Robot and Transformers 1 are going wild in the cinemas at the moment.
Oh, good.
Both getting rave reviews and both doing quite well as far as I'm aware.
Both are very good. I mean, I've got, despite the obvious appeal of Transformers, Wild Robot is just a phenomenal movie. That might end up as on our best of list
for this year. Absolutely.
It feels like movies are coming back to life again a little bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit on. I want to get out and see.
Wild Robot feels like it's skirting that. Hey, are we tipping over just to be a little bit better than Pixar?
Certainly looks very polished.
It's beautiful looking and it's a lot more impactful than I thought it was going to be. Seeing the second second trailer, it really does. It does the Pixar hit the field sort of thing. So, yeah, go DreamWorks.
Actually, those Transformer designs look pretty damn good too.
Oh yeah, Transformers 1 is very good as well. I'd say Transformers 1's a solid B. Wild Robot's an A class. Film. It's
Transformers has its audience. It's not going to be.
It's what we call in the olden days a genre pick. It's, I go off and watch westerns.
It's gonna appeal to the substantial Transformers fan base out there. It's drawing a lot on the IDW comic lore of the series, but it's mixing it's its own thing. It's mixing a whole lot of different lore from different places and different iterations of Transformers into a more G1 aesthetic. So that's good.
Okay, let's talk about what's recently out and what's coming.
Okay. So we've had the launch of, I think it's the fall anime season has started. So we've got a lot of new anime hitting the streaming services, and a lot of it's on Netflix of all places, which I'm slightly surprised by. A lot of the really good stuff is on Netflix. So we've got the new version of Ranma Half.
It is Ranma. Good grief.
Yeah, it is. And it's very similar to, like, the first episode's out. It's very similar to the old anime, but it's just a beautiful design and a way of expressing it. So it looks like they haven't tampered much with the actual formula. They've just given it a bit modern, fresh coat of paint.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good. Dan to Dan is also on Netflix, and that is very interesting. Basically, a UFO enthusiast, UAP enthusiast, and a ghost occultist enthusiast meet in high school under strange circumstances, and both challenge the other to go to a location at night to prove the other wrong. So the UFO enthusiast goes to a ghostly tunnel, and the occultist goes to a abandoned hospital which is supposed to be a site for alien abductions. So both actually find out that the other is completely and absolutely correct. And chaos ensues from there. It's interesting.
Sounds like fun.
I'll offer a little bit of a trigger warning for the first episode, so take care. The aliens are very sleazy, but it is interesting. I'm curious to see where it goes from there. The other one Netflix has that's interests me, but I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, is Orb, which is basically a look at late medieval ages, early Renaissance setting, and it's looking at an astronomer and up against the church. So I'm curious to see. There's a lot they could do with that.
Curious to see what they do with that one.
Yeah. The other ones we've got there are Blue Box and Blue Lock. So both are sports animations. Blue Box is looking at a growing romance between two sporting enthusiasts, and Blue Lock is the very hard-on deathmatch soccer sort of game, with people competing to be the best. So those are the ones that I'd probably recommend to take a look at so far this season, and the ones I've seen have been really, really kind of enthusiastic about. So yeah,
that's cool.
Okay, Tomb Raider's out too.
Yeah, is that it's coming out on the 10th, so that's tomorrow.
That's a character. She's definitely improving.
Yeah, and is that Hayley Atwell's voicing the character, I believe?
Mm-hmm. So I'm hoping it doesn't go too, like, I'm a little bit worried in terms of the format, but I'm excited to see. I'm keen, but we'll see where we go. Hopefully we're getting the the Lara Croft Tomb Raider semi-occult archaeological adventures that Indiana Jones has tread the ground before. But yeah.
I think it's the same production company that's responsible for Castlevania as well. So
okay, well, they're pretty good. So
yeah. Okay. We've got My Hero Academia, Your Next one-off movie coming out 10th of October. We've got on the 13th of October, double at the Lunar SX.
Yes, thanks.
Nautica, Valley of the Wind, and Poco Rosso. So, yeah.
That's a good double.
Wow. You want to make your way out to Frio, that's probably good.
Yeah, that's a good reason to go to Frio.
Both great films. Nausicaa is
it's legendary.
It's in my top 2 of Studio Ghibli films. So
yeah, absolutely.
Poco Rosso
was my entry
for mine because I just love that World War One sort of air combat and
the kind of romance of air.
Although it's set between the two wars, you've still got a lot of that sort of barnstormer feel to it, and Studio Ghibli loves the tech of that era as well, and will lovingly portray that.
So Blinky Bill is getting a new movie, is that right?
We've got a new Blinky Bill coming out on October 17th. Also, Bocce the Rock. So that's a recap, parts 1 and 2. So the series, I believe that's the first series, is being recaptured to 2 movies, which is interesting, sort of attempting to become a band movie.
Okay.
We've got Memoir of a Snail coming out.
Check that out.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see that.
I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, well, we said Wild Robot might be the animated movie of the year for us. That's one of the other possible contenders, and Flow is another possible contender, but that's not coming out till I think December. Interstellar 5555 is coming up at the Revival House on the 17th. And
check it out.
Is that
Yes.
Daft Punk's
Yes.
video clip turned into a movie? Or am I
I'm so
imagining things?
excited. I'm
Oh,
really
man.
excited. So
I
Might have to check that out.
I believe that's where they got the graphics from.
Yeah. Wow.
And the other one coming out on the 17th is Gundam Requiem for Vengeance on Netflix, which, as a Gundam fan, I should be more excited about, but it seems like Zeon's invaded the Uncanny Valley, so I'm not sure.
Oh, look, that sort of stuff is the stuff that seems utterly amazing when you see it on paper, and then you see the thing in real life, well, games and whatever, and it's like, oh, it's just a big robot with guns. And that's it.
Yeah. See how it goes. Because I mean, if they're going the Xeon aspect in the 1 Year War, you always theme it with the horrors of war. And
it's the South Park thing. It's a monkey with 7 butts. Yes.
Yes, that's true. Sorry,
and
fans. We'll do our Hail Marys afterwards.
All good. And October 24th, we've got My Freaky Family coming out.
Oh,
which I've got nothing on. I'm sorry to say.
Neither have
I. Either. Never heard of it. The portrait looks a little ordinary, but we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah. Character design is a little, let's see.
Generic, shall we say? Very 70s doll.
So in terms of that page, like the appealing is coming from the Adam Elliott story characters. Yeah, it's true.
Indeed.
But Interstellar 555 is the version with the Daft Punk soundtrack, as far as I'm aware.
Right, that's what I thought. Which is based off Macross.
No.
Which is what's the style they're riffing off?
Is it the Federal Express it's based off?
The what?
It wasn't Galaxy Defenders or something. What was that one with the superheroes in there?
Oh, you're thinking Science Engineering Gatchaman with Battle of the Planets with all the band.
Yeah, Battle of the Planets. That's right, with their pokey little R2D2 knockoff. That one, that was kind of fun, I got to say. That was the first Japanese animation I actually got into. Not into, but I just watched in the afternoons in the 80s and thought, it's kind of cool.
Like
the usual Hanna-Barbera nonsense.
I wanted to be princess growing up, totally.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just trying not to be Lunk, so
you're old now. You can get away with murder.
What's she called in Gatchaman? June the Swan. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Cool.
So, okay.
So I think of all of these, it's a toss-up between Snails and 5555.
There's definitely, there's a few things to see this week, and it's all this week.
Yeah.
Busy time for us animators.
Yes.
Might even get some work done too.
True.
Well, let's take a look at the monthly topic, I guess. So, guys and girls, grab a bowl of cereal, sit down in front of the TV too close that your parents would shout at you, and get ready because we're going to the 80s.
Oh, yeah.
Again.
Cartoon Fest, actually.
Because at least 2 of us live in that animation space. It was my childhood. Like, I literally, from 5 to 15 years old, the 80s was, that get up in the morning, watch the cartoons. Like, before that, I remember some things, but that was my key animation watching time.
For me, it was 13 to 23. So
in terms of what we're looking at it from a different angle, because we're totally not going down there. Hey, let's look at some 80s cartoons. We're totally looking at it from the point of view of the merchandise stuff. Okay, but we're going to dive into the history of this first. So let's look at lunchboxes.
Okay.
Right. Hi, kids.
Okay.
Welcome to old school merchandising.
Yes. See, I loved the lunchbox history. And there's definitely still lots of collectors, and they still make them. You can still get lunchboxes and stuff like that. But
it's weird. classic example, top left.
The Flying Nun.
The Flying Nun.
I had to include
That's a Sally
it 'cause
Field.
I
That's
saw
a
it.
Sally
I saw
Field
it.
movie.
I recently rewatched the pilot to The Flying Nun and I loved it.
That's right. They made a series, didn't they? God,
Yeah.
I had forgotten.
Yeah. So
That's right. Sally Field
great.
is a young teen star. Actually,
yeah,
it's about
well,
70 something now. God.
she was Gidget before she was the Flying
right.
Nun. Yes.
She was the teen queen, I guess, on the beach.
But,
of the beach.
Yeah, merchandise wasn't the way we see merchandise, because definitely as a child of the 80s, we were totally looking at that earlier time period as being sparse of toys, but it wasn't really. There was a lot of stuff. It's just it wasn't really marketed to the TV series and things like that.
Well, let's put it this way: they were marketed to kids low on the totem pole, because pre-Star Wars, just around that era, kids were like definitely. If there was a party, you'd get the kids' table in the corner, quite literally. You'd be stuck there to stay out of the way of the adults who really got down to the business of having fun, and you were just there not to get in the way, basically. You'd have your fairy bread, your little red sausages and tomato sauce, maybe a few sausage roll, little mini sausage rolls or something, and that would be it. Fairy bread, and that was the status. So nothing was a collectible. It was just like, oh, here's some stuff we can give to the kids, and that'll keep them busy. Like your uncle coming back from a holiday and say, "Hey, kids, I got you some rubbish." Ooh.
The idea of people collecting McDonald's Happy Meal toys.
It's unthinkable in that era. Like, why would you do such a thing? It was just nuts. That's an 80s thing.
But every kid went.
That period are a lot of money nowadays. Very hard to find. A lot of cash.
It's weird.
Every kid went to school with a lunchbox. And if you were special enough that your parents loved you, they got you your favorite show on a lunchbox. I think the best modern representation of that time period in animation is in Toy Story 2. Toy Story 2 talks about that market of early toys, like Woody the pull string cowboy. And all that for Woody's Roundup, and there wasn't an action figure. He was actually a doll, and So
and there was some sort of merchandise along, as I was saying, like guns for westerns, or rocking horses, or cardboard stand for Commander, like to control your starship for Commander Cody, or that sort of thing. It was
very generic, though.
It's very generic, and a lot of rack toys. A lot of stuff with slapped on.
It's you'd get Western hats in the same way that you get a pirate costume for Halloween or something. It was that generic. So, it was a trope more than anything else.
And models, didn't they do like models?
Yes, not model kits, but I know when I was a wee nipper, there was a big market of a lot of metal cars you could buy. So the biggest franchise, it wasn't really a franchise. The biggest merch you could get that was prestigious was all the Thunderbirds toys and the Joe 90, all the Jerry Anderson stuff.
I'd include that as animation, Jerry Anderson stuff.
Yeah. It's all stop motion or miniatures, visual effects. That's where we're sort of crossing over a bit there. But that was all that stuff. You'd have this metal toy that would weigh a ton. Amazing things. And the thing is, they'd survive the playground as you threw them at brick walls and stuff. I mean, for all you collectors out there in your JB or Hi-Fi or something, that just sounds horrendous. But they were just no one really gave a shit about them, really, until 20 years later, and they get nostalgic.
And you're right, you did have model kits as well, because Star Trek
was all FX, World War II.
So. Yeah, well, no, Shuttle Galileo is there because was it AMT at the time wanted to do a model kit of something, and they actually helped them design the Galileo to make a model kit of it.
But if you went to a hobby shop, you'd have walls and walls and walls of fucking World War II stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And just
a small bookshelf. Of a couple of space stuff.
Tin soldiers were still a thing.
They were actually more for the older generation, I guess. It was a bit
Army Men,
modern kids of the 70s.
And the first iteration of G.I. Joe, we probably should talk about there, which was, Barbie and G.I. Joe. So talking stole-like figures. With G.I.
Briefly, the
Joe,
$60 million man. Yeah.
Well, so, say 60s going into the 70s.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe was looking at more military accurate costuming to start with, and then later on when war became unpopular, thanks to Vietnam War in America. Don't worry, that changes. You kind of had G.I. Joe trying to scramble to do other things and make it an adventure brand rather than a military brand. So,
Yeah, well, no, that was all part of the thing. So part of our little sojourn into games and toys is to really look not so much at animation per se, but at its side hustles. Merch is one of those things that keeps a lot of what we do alive, basically. And looking at the merchandising, you can sort of see the financial and economic models changing over time.
Animation is expensive.
It is, and it's slow. And so, that's essentially in part our interest. So, one of the reasons why Star Wars was so bloody off the charts successful was its merchandising.
Well, can we backtrack a couple of 7 or 8 years before?
We're racing ahead here.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about, racing cars at the moment. So let's hit 1969. So we've got a Hot Wheels cartoon which comes out, lasts for 2 seasons, and was there specifically to try and promote the Hot Wheels cars, but was trying to, gently do it. And it fell up against fell foul of the SEC and complaints by a competitor being leveled against it. So it lasted for 2 seasons, but he ended up not getting support because the Federal Communication Council, was it?
FCC.
Decided that there was it would count it as half an hour of advertising rather than half an hour of children's TV to its network companions. So consequently, they were less enamored with screening that because it cut into their actual advertising time that they could run. As
strict regulations on that one.
Yeah,
I ran into something similar with my Lego film, The Magic Portal.
That's why.
One of the things that gave my distributor big frowny faces was the fact I made the world's worst formatted animation for television during 1989. It was 15 minutes long, exactly the wrong length for anything. It wasn't 25 minutes and it wasn't 5 minutes. And it could probably cut it up into episodes maybe, but that was like 3 5-minute episodes. Can't fit that anywhere. And the big problem, they said, with distribution, you've basically cut your own legs off. It's like, wow, wouldn't it sell like hotcakes? And they told me, yeah, that's the problem. It's a 15-minute ad for Lego. Nobody in Europe's going to touch it because it'll be impossible to program. And of course, I'm thinking, I made this great thing. It's like, oh God, what was I thinking? I built this beautiful bridge in the middle of a desert. It's like, fuck.
You're just too early for the water.
Correct. I had to wait for the tides.
20 years later, you would have been fine.
So So this is the classic example. Like, if one of the first things you should do when you're making any project, get a producer. I'll get out the telescope. Have a look. Oh yeah, don't go that way. But so all this merchandising, you'll see changes quite a bit when we get into the later decades. But back in the 60s and 70s, it was super serious. Yeah.
True.
Sorry. As you were, Dave. But I ran into that very issue. Yeah.
Talk about the comics of the 70s, Dave.
Well, you're talking Marvel, aren't you?
He's froze. He's totally frozen. Is he back? No.
Oh,
Dave, see.
Hang on. Dave.
He's kind of the expert there. Oh, man. You just smash him from the top of the frame.
Know. Can you hear him downstairs there, Tanya? Sorry.
Yeah. No.
Dave.
Frozen. That's totally frozen.
Give my pen. Give him a poke.
Lost him. Okay.
Oh well.
Well. Yeah. Let's gloss over the comics because we can totally talk the Star Wars merchandising.
Yeah. Ooh.
Ooh,
Dave is undergoing a total existence failure right now. We'll have to reboot him at some point.
We'll get him back. We'll get him
God, Kenner toys.
Look, Kenner did some like George Lucas did some clever stuff with the marketing stuff. It's like merchandise rights. Was it 100% of the merchandise rights?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, no one was taking George seriously, so he got away with murder. And then he turned it into he basically redefined Hollywood, really. It's the most successful indie producer of all time, really, in terms of Hollywood.
But the demand for the toys was so intense that they were like pre-selling the toys. You could buy the card backs for the toys without the toys being available.
So the other thing sorry.
Yeah, so it's just it went gangbusters, and they did it at a scale that you wouldn't call it a doll. It
was like a species almost.
What is it? Dave would be the person to talk about that.
Well, look, with Star Wars toys, I swear there must be a 3-inch layer of plastic forming as an archaeological layer under every backyard in Australia at the moment, because of all the discarded Kenner toys. There were so many of the bloody things. There were hundreds and hundreds and millions and thousands of them. And
like
you couldn't go to anyone. I mean, as a kid, I couldn't go to anyone's house without finding 2 or 3 of them half buried in the garden, quietly moldering away, and another dozen on a shelf somewhere. They were just everywhere. And it seemed during the school holidays that every second or third ad was a Star Wars ad. Like somebody selling twin poles or shoes or, lunch boxes, comics, whatever. And they were, using Star Wars as a delivery device because that's what the kids were all into.
It's true.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is. Hold on.
Hey, here he comes.
Wait. He's loading in.
Hey.
Yep, I've loaded in using my phone, so apologies.
He's back. Nice.
It's David the 8-Ball. It's his avatar.
Yeah, apparently. So apologies for that. All right, so what were we, 1970s comics?
Yes. We'd segued briefly into Kenner toys for Star Wars.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll go back to 1970s.
Oh. No. Gone again.
Have we run afoul of DC Comics or something there, Tanya?
Maybe.
Have you got me?
Yes, we got you.
Yes.
Okay, cool. All right, I was trying to access my notes on the phone, so that's problematic, but we'll see how we do. All right, so no, we're up to 1970s comics. So the rules for the FCC obviously didn't apply to the comics at the time. So you've actually ended up with a lot of marketing going through comics. So things like Marvel Comics and DC Comics would be promoting toys such as, or for Marvel Comics, the big one would have been Shogun Warriors. The 12, or the 16, 17-inch tall plastic.
Another one.
Based on the Japanese shows of like Mangazi, Great Grandanda,
Ultraman.
I think even Japanese Spider-Man's robots in there as well, Leopardo.
Oh, really?
Nice. So and of course Godzilla and Rodan. I shouldn't forget those two are there. So they promote stuff like that. They promote stuff like ROM. They promote stuff like the Micronauts, and
they're a big thing.
It's an inelegant solution, but it is a solution to looking at advertising that way, and it's something that's going to come important later on as we go through into the 80s, because you can see a bit of crossover with two very major toy brands of the time. That's roughly it for 1970s as far as comics go. And you've already talked about Star Wars, I'm assuming.
We started.
We got part way in there. Yeah.
Because we were definitely talking about the whole thing of the sheer demand for the toys as well, and George Lucas made a mint load.
Like for the first 6 months, they sold empty boxes, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
they did sell empty boxes. Yeah.
I think I think from the toy manufacturers, it was a goldmine, and because Star Wars was such a strong story to start with, and it had such a strong design sense. I mean, look at all those characters on that shelf there, right? They're all distinctive and interesting. Never mind whether you find them boring Star Wars or not, but each character is distinct. They're beautifully designed. They're all doing something.
Thanks, Ralph McQuarrie.
Yeah, seriously, it was a design triumph, old Star Wars. It was like the old science fiction novel covers suddenly jumped to life in a way that even the old science fiction novel covers couldn't compete with. It was amazing. It was it was that magic combination of, well, no one had seen anything like it before.
No.
And it like took a lot of very old familiar tropes and made them fresh and new again.
Yeah.
And it looked absolutely freaking real. It looked as solid and as realistic as any other movie from the 70s. So it felt alive and vibrant. Like it almost invented new colors in the spectrum. It made everything else look old, drab, and black and white by comparison.
Yeah, absolutely.
It absolutely affected everything. Every cartoon, every show, even things like Doctor Who were affected by. They had K9 turn up because they needed a robot companion thanks to R2D2. Yeah, wild stuff like that. It just affected everything everywhere. It was like a major disaster or something. There's a life before it turned up, and there's a life after it turned up, and the two lives are different.
Yeah, and from a toy line, it was dominating at the time. I mean, sure, you had big brands beforehand, with IPs like Planet of the Apes, or for the Mega line was doing quite well, and $6 Million Man, of course, had a great toy line for it. But
G.I. Joe with a hole drilled in his head for a little eyepiece. Yep.
Yep. But this was just something, a next level, an absolute craze.
I had one of those.
Oh, I had a couple. I got a couple for Christmas. You couldn't not have one, actually. I think I had a tall robot with a tall head. That's right, the assassin robot. What's its name? Can't remember its name. And
IG-88.
Yeah, that one. Back when it was just a mysterious prop in the background of The Empire Strikes Back. So all that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, the actual Kenner toys themselves were terrible quality. They couldn't bend the legs or arms, or like you could move the arms and legs, but they had no elbows or knees. And after dealing with Jerry Anderson metal Thunderbird 2s, they really felt insubstantial.
But they were easy to produce and everyone could get them.
Correct. Yeah. And that's why there's a whole layer of them forming an archaeological layer in every backyard in the 70s.
You're going to get people jigging for them if you say that. They're ridiculously priced nowadays.
Good luck to that. Well, you probably would find a few if you looked around hard enough. But that stuff changed Hollywood, and it changed how animation was made and sold and marketed, and we're still living in its shadow now.
Absolutely.
So, there's a whole industry. What you're seeing here is the first year of the original artifacts that essentially spawned a whole industry that Comic-Cons and stuff are still living off, the merch industry. And it suddenly became not just, here's something for the kids to keep them amused. It's like, I'm going to buy this and not open it or touch it or play with it or anything because it's an investment in the future. And
yes, but it still wasn't being looked at. Although it has become an investment, it still wouldn't be looked at investment in 1977 terms.
God, no.
No.
But a lot of toys are now made to be just that.
Yeah. And this did have people scrambling from a couple of different perspectives. It had people scrambling to look for the next big sci-fi blockbuster. So a lot of projects that were sitting on the back burner before, some of which we've talked about through the Dark Disney era, looking at you, Black Hole, got greenlit, and a lot of those also got toy lines associated with it.
Absolutely.
That disappeared into obscurity. I'm looking at you, Black Hole.
Come on! I wanted a Maximilian.
Maximilian was.
Look, I've got a Maximilian, not the original line because I'm not that rich, but Super 7.
It's this weird mix of 50s Disney and Star Wars. Like the whole wild spaceship looks like some kind of deep south paddle steamer in space. It's got that fantastic Jules Verne feel to it, but at the same time, it's got, when you look at those fantastic control panels with all the little rectangles on them, it's like something out of the 1970s comic scene. Those really highly art directed sort of comics with the really interesting look.
We know a lot of the Star Wars visuals were also ripped from Mobius as well.
Absolutely. Star Wars is
Valerian.
everything golden era of science fiction was aspiring to, and then some.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But
we could talk ad nauseum
Oh.
about Star Wars.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So let's
So-
move on to, I guess, Strawberry Shortcake then for something completely different. All right. So
Now that's
we're-
classic 70s, almost crying clown 70s, that one.
Yeah, so
No, we're actually talking about the 80s iteration here, which is really interesting because,
Really?
well, look,
early 80s, let's face it.
very
No,
early
that's-
1980s on the dot. So
Right, that
you
explains it. Yeah.
Yeah. So, looking to boost Strawberry Shortcake, I think it's American Greeting at the time.
Yep.
Decided to do a special, World of Strawberry Shortcake. So it was a one-off special in the 1980s. They were expecting to have the same kickback that or problems that happened with Hot Wheels for the FCC.
Mm.
And so a lot of the major networks decided not to screen it. So they fished it out to independent networks instead, local TV channels, and just as a one-off. And it worked. It didn't get any major sort of complaints registered from it from the SCC. It acted as a toe in the water and ended up producing a couple more one-off specials, and then eventually I can't remember how many seasons, 2 or 3, and I think it was by, I want to say Dick. At the
DIC.
time. Yeah, that Dick. So yeah, it started and it was there to market, and it didn't get the complaints they were expecting. So
Do we have to talk about Canadian animation?
well, look, we probably
Well,
will
you
at
could
some
do a whole
stage,
special on that, actually.
Yeah.
because we're
Yes,
going to be
Canadian Film
talking
Board.
about a lot of Canadian animation and a lot of Japanese animation kind of through this, despite them being American cartoons.
Yeah.
Well, Sydney
but-
wasn't the only Korean animation house of the day. Canada was also.
Yeah. Look, and this kind of started them looking at eventually looking at the Care Bears, which, if you want to look at an exercise in cynicism, that's it, because that was Strawberry Shortcake on cocaine. It was made for multiple levels of integration across various products, across toy line and animation working together. And later on, that would come out in 83, 84, and make itself a lot of monies. But we're going to talk about political change before then, don't we?
Absolutely, because something happened in 1980.
Family Ties came out.
Actually, that's a microcosm of it.
Yeah, because we are talking about a Reagan supporter.
That's right. So what you look at the basic premise of that is the portent of things to come culturally and, economically, I suppose. Up to now, the 70s have been largely shall we say, the end of modernism. And the end times, or, there was recessions, oil shocks. In the States, they had Watergate scandal, which completely upset all the Yanks and broke their confidence with their government. There was the dismissal in Australia. There was the Vietnam War, ground to a horrible end before a small third world country successfully drove a superpower into the sea, quite literally. It was dark times in the 70s. If you ever wondered what the 70s felt like to be in, it feels a bit like now, with Trump about to become president, or not, hopefully.
Don't
Whilst the Middle East blows up around us and there's a Ukraine war going on in Europe.
Politics, yes. But
that sense of doom scrolling, this is what the 70s actually felt like.
This is okay. Can I pause us there and just talk a little bit about that whole doom feeling at the moment? If you are feeling down, there is. We lost. Okay, Dave's doing that. So this
the
will be
nothing got him. Yeah.
Public service announcement.
Okay.
If you're feeling down, obviously there's people you can talk to and people you can call online, and there's lots and lots of avenues to do that. And I think simply Googling who can I talk to about from a mental health state is potentially great. But if you're just looking for an animation thing that would to make you feel better about it, check out Kurzgesagt on YouTube. It is
yes,
they describe themselves as nihilists, but optimistic nihilists. But the little animations are really cute, and they do talk about doom and the end of the world quite often, and how it does a lot for my internal confidence in the future, because I am really into optimistic sci-fi. Like going through the 80s and the 90s where it was just every bit of sci-fi was this nihilistic bullshit.
absolutely. No one had a nice word to say about the future at all.
No.
And that and I, in my primary school years, to give you some idea of how this was going, most of the adults I grew up around or with, like whether they were school teachers or parents or relatives, weren't entirely convinced we were going to survive the century.
Yeah.
Right. And that was the Cold War, among other things.
We in the 80s were still watching the Doomsday Clock. Right up until the Berlin Wall went down.
Which is really weird, because in the 80s, everyone talked about the Cold War as if it was something that happened in the 60s and 70s. It's really weird. But there was this kind of mental tidal change with the 80s. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
So let's look at
1981. Check it out. Oh, yes. Kurzgesagt, check it out. If you're feeling down about things, it's a really good channel for building up your positivity about the bad things that are going on in the world.
The big difference we have in the 21st century now is that we have all this help and support we just did not have back then. It was non-existent. So non-existent, like we didn't even have words for it. So, yeah, it was crazy. Anyway.
All right. So 1981, Ronald Reagan elected president. So, yeah, I know. I'm not feeling great about it as well. But from our point of view, it led to a huge shake-up in the FCC. So the repeal of the fairness doctrine, and caused it basically to become defanged. Allowed for a more commercial outlook on TV. Completely defanged. Allowing a more commercial outlook on TV. So the greed is good generation.
Before it self-destructed in 87. Yeah.
It interestingly became more free in that sense. It became way more conservative. Like the idea of showing a gun during an 80s cartoon, had to fire lasers, and it was generally made to ricochet off things.
Yeah, we're gonna be talking about that a bit later on as well, when we look at things that being tried to be turned into cartoons.
So you got a couple of really mixed trends coming here. So you got this kind of what we'd now recognize as social conservatism. So Reagan was able to cash in on Carter's ability. The previous president was a guy called Jimmy Carter. He is the proverbial one-term president. It was a complete disaster with poor old Carter. He's 100 years old this week or last week or something.
And he's made a great legacy for himself.
Yeah, right. But at the time, he was considered to be a terrible president.
Yeah.
Mainly because he managed to get the presidency at the worst possible moment for an American president. Post-Watergate, post-Vietnam, there'd been an Islamic revolution in Iran, which had ended up with, 400 staff of the American embassy being taken hostage?
Oh, God,
so for months, half the news in 1979 would have been about hostages. They did this spectacularly inept rescue attempt that absolutely blew up on the tarmac and in the desert and all over the place, and completely humiliated the Carter administration and the United States. So in terms of how the Yanks felt, it probably felt like Escape from New York.
Also, and
that's how Reagan got in. He coasted in on that thing. Now, later on, we found out things like the Iran Gate affair, where as part of his winning strategy, it was to free the hostages, and he did it by basically selling the Iranians weapons or something through a guy called Colonel Oliver North. You may know that name.
Yep.
And using that money to fund the Contras, right-wing death squads in Latin America, to wipe out some democratically elected socialist governments. Welcome to the 1980s. So what you see, take Predator, remove, say, the Predator out of it, and that's sort of where the politics were at the time. You know what I mean?
Arnold Schwarzenegger in the jungle. Yes.
Yeah, well, that's how they imagine themselves.
Yeah.
Some beefcake infant with a large M60 machine gun. But anyway, so the politics completely changed from that sort of slightly, we're feeling depressed about the world, but progressive feel, into this aggressively logical positivist, this aggressive, optimistic, get rich, let's have a party, let's leave our troubles behind us. Weird mix of rapacious commercialism, like greed is good, stock market is all. And so what you saw was a whole pile of little industries get absolutely monstered by the stock market. The savings and loan scandal that's coming in the 80s, if you know that one. All these little small business savings and loans were like little building societies. They all got almost wiped out as an entire industry by the Gordon Geckos of this world, who just
basically corporate raiders, basically
use their insane leverage and free run to basically outmaneuver, out by all that stuff. They basically wiped out whole industries and then sold them off.
Brokers started being seen with the same legitimacy as say lawyers and doctors.
Yeah,
and
it was
of course
weird.
the
A
rise
weird
of
time.
yuppie culture.
So
Yuppies.
so half the shit we're in now is set up by this stuff. So while we might be talking about toys and what seems like completely frivolous stuff, it's sort of keeping track of. We like to think we've got our own culture and stuff, but a lot of it very much comes from whatever happens to be the dominant economic juggernaut of the day.
Yeah.
So at the time, the United States, for all its problems, seemed unassailable. It was like kind of like the looking at it now, you'd say it's like the cultural colonial empire that we all sort of orbited around. So whatever happened in the States affected us directly, and we found our own life and culture being affected by it, almost like a gravitational pull or something, like the tides changed.
It certainly feels like we're still living in the shadow of Thatcher and Reagan in many ways. So, yeah.
You know, and if you look at the clown show that's British politics, for example, that's all these characters trying to live in their shadow without the ability to actually do what they did, and none of the vision. But they're still going through the motions and carrying on like it's 1989 or something, and failing dismally. And they didn't come up with a 21st century solution for anything other than to do this Brexit stuff, right? That's the British experience.
This is really dark stuff to have a picture of strawberry shortcake to.
This is true. And this is probably why strawberry shortcake was so successful, as were the Care Bears. So what you've got is this weird mix in the States of all these evangelical Christians having moral panics about everything, rock and roll, D&D, right? At the same time, a completely different type of conservative group, the kind of economic dudes, what we'd probably now dismiss as tech bros, because they essentially through the 90s and noughties became computer folk, and effectively all the pre-computer industries got eaten by these guys and absorbed by
or hedge funds.
Or hedge funds, all their hedge funds. So these became the dominant forces. So if you're wondering why Hollywood can't seem to make a fucking original film anymore, it's because of this stuff. Right. So back in the 80s, there's this kind of thing going on. You got this sort of moralizing, family value, panicky, social conservatism mixed in with this full-on, no holds barred, I suppose you'd call it libertarian, I suppose, sometimes ultra-violent, and all this other stuff going down. So you see that all through the cartoon world in weird and strange ways. So essentially, the barriers between cartoons and merchandising vanished almost completely. So just about every cartoon you saw in the 80s that I guess you guys in the 21st century know and love was actually designed by advertisers to sell crappy plastic Kenner toys or something like it, right? So coming out of the 70s, watching cartoons, feeling like they were getting old and tired, and then suddenly all the old and tired ads didn't get renewed. They suddenly turned into ads. It felt a bit dispiriting to be an animator in the 80s a little bit. It wasn't until the 90s with cable TV that all changed.
But of course, when it comes to the Americans going out and promoting all this heavy marketing for animated characters and toys like that, we really have to blame the Belgians.
Yes.
This is one of those weird hybrid examples.
That's actually quite true. So
yeah. Because you've got this it's existed since the 50s, and you've had media existing since the 50s for this, and yet during the 70s you're getting like the plastic toy range sold at the late 70s, and the early 80s you start getting some of that media that was made, I think, in France at the time, and that was sort of being imported over, redubbed and re-released into cinemas as the Magic Flute. So, and from there on, you get 9 seasons of the Smurfs marketed across the decade by Hanna-Barbera, and it was
strange
just
times indeed, eh?
Yeah, phenomenal. And this is one of those weird sort of hybrid examples that it wasn't initially created as a marketing toy, but the media that was there was certainly grabbed on, refined, and used to market to a vulnerable audience.
Yeah, and essentially the Smurfs occupy this sort of similar location in our culture as Tintin and Asterix would. Yeah. They're obviously European, but no one's thinking, "Oh, I'm so into European animation." They'll think, "Oh, I'm totally into the Smurfs." Yeah, and so they have that clear, what's that clear line style that the Tintin and Asterix have? What they call the clear line style for their comics, and so that's the Smurfs.
Yeah, and you've obviously had examples of this sort of mania before in the 80s.
Lucky Luke too.
Yes, that would be another one. He'd be much more obscure, but definitely Lucky Luke.
I was thinking even during the 70s you would have had Peanuts, but obviously Peanuts,
that's more 60s.
But marketing first, it was made as here's this, and it's also we can sell some Snoopy phones.
That's right, and marketing comes afterwards. Whereas a lot of this stuff, the marketing was coming first.
Yeah, and although this is one where the marketing kind of come afterwards. From an American's perspective, not so much.
Yeah.
I can tell from like a story from my own childhood. I knew who Snoopy was before I knew what Peanuts was.
Yeah.
So
he was an icon, I guess, a viral meme type icon.
Everyone had a Snoopy doll somewhere.
That's it. Or they had some pendant or a keychain or something. That
or a little plastic thing with Doghouse with him sitting up as a Red Baron or something along those lines. You know? Yeah.
It was pretty safe, innocuous stuff to kind of give to anybody for a Christmas present, and no one would bat an eyelid at it.
In the early days of the Smurfs, right? I remember, going down to funny places like the nearby petrol station to buy the latest Smurf release, and you'd get whole piles of them of different types, and lots of kids traded them. It was it's really weird. It kind of replaced marbles for
they did. Like a Smurf toy was somewhere between a Kinder Surprise and a Kenner toy from Star Wars. That's
it was kind of the Pokemon realm as well. You had to collect them all.
True,
I guess.
Yeah,
but they didn't have anywhere near the. Sorry, go on.
Your collection wasn't complete without a Papa Smurf and a Smurfette.
That's true.
Yeah,
but I guess one thing I should mention, I've given Hanna-Barbera credit to it, but it was actually also farmed out later in the process to Wang Film Productions and Toei, which is a name we're going to mention quite a few times through this.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah.
The Japanese do the Smurfs, or do they just distribute them?
No, I think they would have done some of the animation of it at certain stages. Remember, we're talking about nine seasons worth, so I'd have to break it down season to season.
Okay, right. I'm impressed. I didn't realize they did that.
Ah.
I learn a new thing every day on the WAnimate podcast.
There we go. So should we talk about having the power for children?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, okay. So,
Wow.
mm,
Welcome to Reaganomics. Take it away, kids.
Masters of the Universe grew out of also those sword and sorcery, sandals and sorcery films, sword and sandals, whatever it is, from the early 80s as well. And there was a few of those. Obviously, Conan was big.
Conan was a big influence on it, yes.
Yes. The art of Boris Vallejo. Yeah. Like, there's definitely a lot of interest in that sort of thing. And just a complete toy line that they created before the animation came out. So in the sense of the animation being an half-hour advertisement, they went that direction. So the toys came first, which is why there's some weird discrepancies across the when things transferred across. And I don't think has Skunkor ever appeared in any of the modern iterations? Like,
yeah, he's in Revelations.
Is he? Yeah. So
if the concept is strong enough, it can survive its own equivalent of the Star Wars Christmas special.
True. Cool thing Masters had was, it was easy to pump out toys because a lot of those bodies were interchangeable and you just replace the heads and the arms and stuff like that. And it had this power fantasy thing going on, which not only appealed to the boys but appealed to the girls when you got She-Ra. Although She-Ra's doll line was a little bit lacking. So, yeah, there was a lot. And, at 7 years old, young me going, oh, look at this show, look at these, and it was definitely more than 7 years old. When did it come out? 84?
Yeah.
I think it was 83 it came out.
I would have been 8 or 9. So, yeah. And who didn't want to raise their sword above their head and say, for the honor of Grayskull?
Wow. Save that for the little kids, eh?
So we actually talk about the legend behind how it became a cartoon?
Yes.
All right. So this is the legend, thanks to the toys that made us for this story. So, full credit to them. I'm not going to say how true or not it is, but damn it, it's a good story, so we're telling it. It first came was trying to sell it to I think it was a Canadian toy store distributor first, and they went, oh yeah, okay, how are we going to sell this to kids? That's all right. There's a comic that comes with it, so that's how they'll be familiar with the story and the lore, and they'll sell them. So the Canadian toy store was great. Then the next one they were just distributor selling to it was Toys R Us. How will sell it to kids? Well, there's a comic that comes with it. There wasn't a comic initially, so they just had to make that on the fly. So that's why you get the mini
they bullshitted, in other words.
They bullshitted. That's why you get the mini comics with the figures to begin with. All right, there's a comic that comes with us. Here's a look at mini comic. That's great, but do kids necessarily read comics nowadays? Well, there's an animated special coming out as well. Yeah, complete horse hockey, but they went with that. And it went to, was it Filmation, I believe, Tanya?
Yep. Yeah, loose schema. Yeah.
Yep. And, Lou sold
legend.
Them,
Dead set legend.
Yeah, Lou sold them going, oh, you could make our special, but for just a little bit more, you can make an entire season worth of animation. And they did that, thinking they'd take a loss on it, but it will promote the toys. Yeah. And boy, howdy did it. And they actually made money on the animation and selling it post.
So we're starting to enter the realm of the franchise.
Oh,
the franchise. Oh, yeah, totally.
So with franchises, a pure franchise would be Pokemon. I've probably mentioned this a few times.
We can't think about that till the 90s, which obviously we're going to have to do a toy show in the 90s.
True. So people then scratch their heads and think, well, is it the toys that make it work? Is it the cartoon? Are the toys?
Is it the game?
Is it the game? Yeah. Is it the comic? What makes this thing? So what you've got is this idea of a concept that somehow survives, that becomes crash proof. Oh, the comic died. Oh, we don't care. We got the cartoon. Oh, the cartoon's dead. No, it's all right. We got the movie. Oh, that's right. The toys are still selling. No one's quite sure what's driving the whole thing. This idea of this invulnerable concept, like a keep, and then everything else is just generated from it, and familiarity keeps it going. Yeah,
it earned money hand over fist for what, 4 years, and then dropped off a cliff. And the movie pretty much killed it. So
that's true.
That's a story in and of itself. You know, bad distributors and idea, bad faith company just was at that stage was functioning on debts and dreams.
But movies that killed the animation. That's another topic.
Yeah. Well, we're going for 3 of them this year. So this one. So
yeah. So one of the weird things about the 80s is that you had all this kind of crazy stuff going down, and a lot of it was fueled by debt and cocaine. Actually, there's an anecdote. I missed it by mere months, it felt like, when I got into the business in 92, when I finally got my first gig at a place that didn't just collapse in the first 5 minutes of signing up. And they were saying, oh, yeah, you should have been here 2 years ago. It was like, huh? What, where, who? And there's all these, people, recovering cocaine addicts called art directors trying to pay off debts from crazy schemes they've come up with 5-10 years ago. So the first company I worked for was Video Paintbrush Melbourne, and they had rooms full of old kit, like washing machine size hard drives, all this early digital stuff that they were in debt by millions of dollars to, that they were still servicing to the bank. None of it functioned. It had all died and collapsed. All the firms that had made it had died and collapsed, but the debt was still there. And so the remnants of that company were trying to kind of build up the business again, and that's how I got my first gig. That's this 3D animator, and it was weird. So I missed all that brightly colored 80s cocaine stuff by 1 or 2 years, I think. But a lot of that stuff was driven by that sort of thing. That was part of that kind of crazy finance, Gordon Gekko. The callers on the floor are more important than people actually making shit. So that influenced a lot of how things got made.
Yeah, but look, it fell over, but it got back up again. Fell over, got back up again. Because you had He-Man New Adventures come out of this, like almost a year or two afterwards, an attempt at re-skinning it as almost a more sci-fi fantasy elements of it than Sword and Sorcery. Then later on in the 2000s, you had 2000X, and a toy line launched with that, with exceptional designers called the Four Horsemen working for them, and those are very well-designed toys, great series, and really sort of expands the lore a lot. And you've had Revelations and Revolution come out in the last couple of years. And again,
both aimed at completely different audiences. I kind of like both. I think they both work, but it works as a complete story as well. But again, it's revitalized the toy brand in a couple of different ways. Yep. So you've got at the moment, I think you've got, what is it, 5 different lines of He-Man Master of the Universe selling at this moment in time. You've got a Super 7 line, you've got a Grayskull line, you've got an animated line, you've got Origins line, and you've got Masterverse line and sublines within those. So, Oh, sorry, I did mention, one of those was crossover with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So Grayskull, Turtles of Grayskull.
Good grief.
Yes.
It's something.
It all becomes multiverses in the end, doesn't it?
So 200 and 223 episodes over 2 years for
Jeez.
Masters and Princess of Power. So, yeah.
God, who the hell's
Yes.
producing all that?
Yeah. So, well, Filmation.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Lou did things on the cheap. There was a lot of reuse of animation, heavy
Mhm.
rotoscoping. You know, there. And there is a rather scathing letter to the management of Filmation from J. Michael Straczynski out there. That J. Michael Straczynski, you know, did Babylon 5, but he was a writer on Princess of Power, and
Oh my God.
he
Got to start somewhere.
And Murder, She Wrote. So, yeah.
Yeah, he questioned heavily the reusing of same tropes over and over again in Princess of Power. So, yeah, of course. She-Ra suffered a lot of the same early tropes that Wonder Woman suffered.
A bondage fetish?
A bondage fetish a little bit.
That's the DNA, really. That's from the 40s. That's 40s progressivism, if you can think of it.
Every second episode for a little while is pretty much She-Ra knocked out of action or Adora, you know, chained up before she can turn into She-Ra.
And I guess we should also mention here there is some antecedents of Barbarian cartoons before then, I think, because doesn't Thunder the Barbarian and Black Star both predate?
Yes.
Although oddly enough, the toy line of Black Star actually comes out after He-Man.
Well, they saw the writing on the wall, didn't they?
Yeah, there's a lot of female.
There's a whole pile in the late 70s. There's a whole pile of really tired, clapped out sword and sorcery Barbarian cartoons, like Barbarian the Barbarian or something, or some weird thing like that.
Thunder's Dico, is it? Doing the storyline, and it's one of those barbarian futurist sort of things.
Yeah.
You know, civilization's collapsed, and we've reverted back to the barbarian era. And Black Star's almost a
that's Thunder. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and Black Star's almost a John Carter of Mars sort of situation of an Earthling transported to a fantasy world.
It's John Carter from Mars yet again. If you know that story, you know, it's a very, very old and well-worn plot device, I guess.
The toys that made us do go in to Masters quite a bit in their episode. They also talk about the battles with Barbie from Mattel.
There was a sea change, like I say, like the 80s was a big sea change from the 70s. So, you know, in the 70s, we had lots of working class stories, and free-to-air television was dominant. So you get lots of things like the Incredible Hulk and the Invisible Man, and these are the Incredible Hulk is a Marvel character, but Bruce Banner in the TV show wanders around like some folk hero, going from one town to the next.
Is it David Banner in the TV show?
Solving somebody
it's
who runs
it's David Banner in the TV series,
sorry,
and he's totally totally Littlest Tobo-y.
It's like they're all these like wandering. He's literally the proverbial folktale wandering do-gooder, and it's like a nice, heartwarming little story about some person gets in trouble, like, oh no, I've lost my cat, or my business is in trouble. Oh, I'll help out. Oh, he helps out, and the Hulk comes in, throws a bear into outer space or something, and all is well with the end.
If ever there was a Marvel franchise to turn into Stairway to Heaven, Hulk is it.
That's it. Definitely. Got to have a cosmic bear in there as well. But the thing is, that was network television, and that was that weird, because it was public and free to air, it was fairly bland and middle of the road because they couldn't make it too controversial because someone would get upset. In the States, that was usually the Bible Belt. So it was all very folksy and homesy and stuff like that. And then when the 80s kicks in and the whole full-on finance stuff starts to really bite, a lot of the advertisers started pressuring the networks to allow them to advertise for more lucrative markets. And there was this really weird change where from the 70s, all that working class folksy hero stuff disappears and gets replaced by, well, muscle-bound fantasy figures and rich dudes. And so all the sitcoms stop being about poor working class people like Welcome Back Kotter and stuff like that, or Taxi or whatever, and they start becoming more what's it again? Alf and all that sort of stuff. Like, what's the Reaganite sitcom? All in the Family. No, not All in the Family. It's 70s. The other one.
Family Ties.
Family Ties.
Family Ties.
Family Ties. Well, I don't know. Like Family Ties. The popularity of that relied on Michael J. Fox becoming popular.
He was the big star. He was like the John
his
Travolta.
Character being the Reaganite fan, but the parents were
very
long-suffering
progressives.
Yeah, long-suffering hippies. Like, yeah.
So that was going on, and the other thing that was taking off, that was really good news for animation in the end, was cable. And so that was the thing that started to really kick in. Now, cable eventually went sour when I guess the far right got into it. But for a while there, it was this big shining thing. And the big shining thing for anybody growing up and living through the 80s, if you could afford cable, that is, we didn't see much of it for a while in Australia, was something called MTV, which was music television. And that did for animation, art direction, and stuff like that. A wonderful shot on the arm. That sort of thing laid the groundwork for the 90s cartoon revolution, where cartoons really did become amazing. We could do a whole fucking season on that, I'm sure, right? And
an episode on, was it Liquid TV as well? Yeah.
That's absolutely right. And so that stuff was what I was inspired by. So my little film was inspired by that stuff. And that was the sort of industry I was aiming for. I mean, I was inspired by Star Wars to get into animation and visual effects. And the only thing that looked viable for me at the time was that style of MTV animation, video clip animation was looking like a prospect. I was never imagining I was going to work in a studio doing Disney cartoons or something. It never occurred to me at all.
Hey, Mark Knopfler, would you like to do 3D animation on your next music video?
Damn straight. The Bosch system. Hot damn.
So, Peter Gabriel, how about this?
Yeah. Aardman. Put Aardman on the map. So there's a whole new generation of other stuff happening. The other 80s, we used to call it. Not the mainstream 80s, like cartoons and Michael J. Fox and MTV and all that stuff, or Coke versus, no, that's 90s. But yeah, this was a new emerging market. And suddenly cartoons, even by the late 80s, were no longer just Disney films and Saturday morning cartoons. They were suddenly becoming video clips. And there was another new form appearing, and that was computer games. So up in the 70s, it was all arcades and quarters, or 20-cent pieces if you're in Australia. By the time we get to the 80s, the home computer market's starting to kick off, and suddenly long-form computer games are turning up. Not arcades, but role-playing games that you can save to a floppy disk, replay back, which sounds pretty boring, but that completely changed. It opened up a whole new universe of animation, which is how my early career was starting to get going. So all these things are happening during the 80s. You've got the kind of weird, big Cold War, Reagan, evangelical, panic attack, crazy Gordon Gekko stuff going down. And then under the surface, there's all these other things going on. That was where we really lived. All this other stuff was just horrid. The stuff that we were interested in would have been where the trends were going: computers, cable, all that stuff.
Speaking of robots,
let's talk about. I was going to say, right. So we're going to do this. We're going to bundle together.
Nice segue, Tanya.
We'll go with Reagan and military men and big truck space daddies.
Yes.
Yeah. Look, there's definitely.
They really
I don't understand.
Strange ways.
I don't understand the appeal of G.I. Joe. It
Neither
never at any
I don't
point.
think it's really an Australian thing, but it's there's Australian fans, but it was definitely huge in America. and it was sort of that shot in the arm of conservative military might, the American coming back and launching G.I. Joe from the 12-inch formula that it was initially in, and it died out at the time after trying to become an adventure series, a crime-based or anti-crime, world crime organization sort of series, and then even going into space for a bit. Died off for a few years and then was revitalized in O-ring figure, 3 3/4 scale. But this one is a deliberate marketing campaign that they entered into. Now, this is going back to 1982, so you still haven't got the FCC as free and easy as it had become a bit later. So the initial plan with G.I. Joe was to market it through comics and get an animated advert to advertise the comic that was advertising the toy. So you started off with G.I. Joe being given over to Marvel Comics to work law for it through Larry Hama. And then as that went on, you ended up with it being turned into a comic series headed by Larry Hama in his first sort of outing as, I think he was an editor beforehand, but first sort of outing on a single line, or sub-editor, I should say, beforehand, but first outing on a single line comic, and going through from there. Now, G.I. Joe ended up broadcasting, I think, a week after Masters of the Universe, and turning itself into a massive hit, powered the toy range as it went on. Now the same thing happened with Transformers. All right, I'm not going to talk about the weird sort of Japanese history of Transformers, but it did. It kind of, G.I. Joe became Micronauts became Diaclone became Transformers when it went back to the USA. For those that know, they know. And this similar sort of thing. They handed it to Marvel Entertainment because Hasbro had the same advertising company as Marvel at the time. It was again handed out to someone to create the storylines of it. In this case, it was editor Jim Shooter and I think Bob Bayansky, doing the actual comic itself and making up the names of the actual Autobots and the lore behind it. Both cartoons were done by Marvel Productions, and both cartoons ended up having some of their work shipped out to Toei, again, to actually produce in the first couple of seasons. Both cartoons launched the toy lines very well. I mean, I remember when Transformers... Yeah. When Transformers first came out, I remember the dam battle. One shall stand, one shall fall, where Optimus and Megatron are using stupid. Megatron's using a mace or flail, I should say, and Optimus has got his energy axe, and both are engaging in an almost lightsaber-like duel on the dam. And it's just one of those iconic moments, and it's stuck in the brain, and just. That. And that's how they were just playing that in Kmart, advertising the toys, just playing that clip over and over and over again. And it was perfect for that. So yes, for G.I. Joe, 82 commissioned, 83 to 86. You had the mini series initially, and then 2 seasons of the cartoon show come out, folding some of the mini series in, so 95 episodes. 84 for the Transformers, 4 seasons, 98 episodes. Toei for the first 2 seasons. I think it went to ACOM for the season 3 and 4. Both had movies coming out in 86, and both kind of killed the franchise. Transformers, for a short term, Transformers movie literally, and G.I. Joe, the movie, had to kind of reestablish or change things around so one of the main characters didn't die like every main character did in Transformers the movie, in an attempt to grab a new range of toys to come out.
Crikey.
Yeah,
Then-
look, it's you talk about the drowning horse in Neverending Story, and the death of Space Truck Daddy in Transformers the movie traumatized so many kids in the 80s.
Brad is tough back
you-
then.
Well,
No,
you know, because it's not like the 70s kids weren't watching bunnies being torn apart.
Oh, yeah.
dude, Watership Down.
So yeah, let's talk cartoon trauma as an episode.
Watership Down, Plague Dog.
Oh,
yeah,
the Plague Dogs. Bloody hell.
But of course, Transformers. There was tons and tons of toys out in those first couple of years, and then to revitalize it, they come up with a movie which basically kills off the majority of the main characters, replaces them with and I love that film. I do.
That's because it's got Orson Welles and Spock in it, basically.
Yeah, it does. Orson Welles, Spock,
Orson
Eric
Welles of
Idle?
all people. Eric Idle, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plays Wreck-Gar. Yeah.
The Untouchables, Robert Stack's in there as well.
Jeez.
Yeah. Judd Nelson of the Brat Pack is the voice of Rodimus Prime. So,
maybe I'll listen to the audio version of it.
I'd watch it at least once, Linz.
Yeah, okay. All right, I'll do it.
But again, okay.
The things we do for our
those
audience.
toy brands sold really well and then dropped off. As
They
toy
definitely
brands
had a
do.
life cycle.
But having said that, was it G.I. Joe, Real American Hero, reincarnated itself in 1989 as G.I. Joe, a Real American Hero. There's no difference, except this time it's being produced by Dick. And that went from 89 to 92. Transformers, as I said, the movie comes in about halfway through its run season. So it's the end of season 2. It time skips to pretty much now, really, isn't it? Roughly the setting of the Transformers movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, to this real year.
About the Mayverse ones.
Yeah, it's in the 2020s. I can't recall when, and then it carries on season 3 and season 4 after that. Then you kind of get this kind of weird limbo in America where it's still having what's called Generation 2, which is a relaunch of the toy line in more garish colors, which are
Best version of Megatron. Best version of Megatron.
Something to look at, yeah. But at the same time, you've got it living an alternative life in Japan and going on with 3 series, seeing out the 80s with, Headmasters series, then Super God Force, sorry, I said it wrong, Super God Master Force, and then Victory.
Man.
So you've
I'm
got
a bit worried you know all this stuff, Dave.
Oh, this I've not seen all of it. I've seen bits and pieces.
Dave,
Dave,
can you angle your camera just up over your shoulder and angle down a little?
Should I just bring
oh my goodness. Look at that.
OG Optimus Prime. Yours doesn't have hands. Mine has hands.
No, mine's it's not my original.
Battle damage.
It's a bit floppy and not well, but I got it for like $6 or $8 about 20 years
proper
ago.
Transformers toy, damaged by childhood playtime.
Yeah, actually, and while we're talking about 1970s comics, here's a toy line that didn't sort of make it. This is
Micronauts?
No, this is Crystar. I don't know if you've ever read the comics of it. It was a minor toy line. It came out, didn't get animation, and it's like we're getting a Marvel re-release of it in 2020. So, 2020. So there we go.
Crystar. Okay, so we've looked at the Lizzie. You've got a note on Lego here, but Lego didn't have its own series then.
No, that's true. That's true. But you could see the influences on Lego. Lego started coming up with concepts. And that is, they started making things like Lego Space and Lego Castle and Lego Pirates and Lego Town. Lego Town was basically just a regular Lego set, just given a new label. So, and this would lead. This is still in the Mondrian age, by the way, the old-fashioned Lego. Red, yellow, blue, white, black. The Mondrian period. The litigious Lego that always had everybody under legal siege somewhere, somehow. Of which I got bitten by. Not like the new Lego, which is the next generation Lego, which is every color under the sun. And they're really quite open and free. And a lot of their players, users, whatever, contribute to their actual product line. And they were rescued by licensing, I think, during the early internet age. They nearly perished. Like... a lot of things nearly did, like the Warhammer series nearly died because of the internet. They couldn't deal with the digital online sort of pirate culture. Is that the one I'm looking at? Or the shared culture or the answer back culture of the new internet? And they had to work out new ways of how the hell do we make a physical toy survive in this day and age of all computer games and virtual stuff. So
I'd like to apologize to our Dutch audience for Lindsay's mispronunciation of Mondrian.
Mondrian? Oh, sorry. Yeah, Mondrian, mate. Yeah. Yeah, if you're into rulers and squares. So I'm losing my thread. But yeah. But the thing that always strikes me about the 80s cartoon stuff, apart from the big square blocky robots, was just how homoerotic a lot of this stuff was. You thought AI slop was pretty crazy. You haven't seen anything until you see Masters of the Universe. Yeah.
Okay. With that note, maybe we start moving this to the end of the 80s.
Actually, can I just before we do that, just one it's
one
it's
last,
huge, so we got to
one last nerd out.
There's okay. There was also a run which we haven't got much of because it didn't last very long, of trying to take R-rated properties, turn them into toys, and then defang them and put them out onto cartoon. So look, there was a lot of them during the time. So you had RoboCop, you had Rambo, you had Chuck Norris.
The
B side to Bruce Lee, basically.
As well.
Hulk Hogan.
That's right, WWF. Yeah.
So there was a lot of that muscle-bound macho energy trying to be made child-friendly at the same time.
In an age of, well, let's put it bluntly, right-wing death squads and Sandinistas. So at the time, we also had the drug war. Remember those?
Oh,
the war on
cops.
drugs? Yeah. Holy moly. So action films were ultra-violent. Even the comedy ones were ultra-violent. And so a lot of what you're seeing here with G.I. Joe is sort of like this is all kind of trickling down, I suppose, for the kids. So on the one hand, you had these moral panics, like, oh my God, rock and roll will turn you to the devil. And at the same time, but guns everywhere, blazing away. That's perfectly all right.
You actually get G.I. Joe drug and anti-drug officers coming out in later lines of the toy.
Yeah. And so you'd have this weird thing with what was left of free-to-air. Network television would have things like the A-Team. Now, the A-Team's a bunch of dudes that are doing this sort of folksy traveling from town to town, except they're all armed to the teeth, and it ends in a big gunfight at the end, right? That's the big difference with the A-Team. And somewhere in the middle of that gunfight, some Jeep is going to do a kind of half jump off a ramp and land upside down, and all the people inside it will somehow crawl out and say, oh no, are you all right? Oh yes, I'm fine. That sort of thing. So they didn't have violence, they had action.
Oh, Mr. T got a cartoon. Sorry,
That's
I almost
right.
forgot about that.
Now Mr. T is a weird mix of things. He's a mix of the 80s full-on, G.I. Joe, muscle-bound dude, although G.I. Joe is much more adventure, like an old-fashioned action man, really, a sort of dude that does adventurous things more than he does military things. But he's also got a touch of the old 70s
Black
kind of
exploitation.
black exploitation, a black resistance thing going as well. So he's sort of this kind of weird sort of not a compromising character. He's more like a kind of character that negotiates two worlds. Yeah.
And look,
But
we've missed
Go
a ton of toys as well, and TV series that exploited it. We've missed Visionaries, we've missed Jason and the World Warriors, we've missed what's those combining?
Oh god, there's tons of it.
Centurions.
Oh,
you're talking about the Wuzzles.
Wuzzles, thank you. Yeah,
Down in the land of Wuzz, but having twice the fun.
There's dozens and dozens of these that just some of them are recalled, some of them not so much.
There was so much gravel and dross, and occasional sparks of inspiration. So I got to say, that's if you're wondering why I'm so indifferent to a lot of the stuff, Tanya, that's the reason why. It's like you kind of walk through Kmart or walk through something, and you're just knee deep in this flotsam, and it's all these people trying to make money with toys using cartoons as a medium.
You don't attach yourself to everything, but you go for what appeals to you.
I've got my foibles as well, but
All right, Tanya, do you want to
Speaking of foibles,
now this would be a high point.
All right, so 1984, two independent artists put out a comic. Which is
underground comic.
Underground comic, which is basically a piss take of Daredevil.
Everything.
And it riffs on, So what's cool, turtles, what's cool mutants, what's cool teenagers, what's cool ninjas.
So they're taking this guy taking the funny animal trope and taking the piss out of all this pretentious comic stuff that was happening in the 80s.
It ties in.
It became part of it.
It ties in so much. It ties in so much to Daredevil comics that the origin of the Turtles is the origin of Daredevil.
Yeah.
So yeah, pretty cool. I always like that, and of course, Daredevil has the Master Stick, and is up against the Hand Clan.
Yeah.
And the Turtles have Master Splinter, and they're up against the Foot.
The Shredder,
But
the only time they became less interesting was when they had Krang, silly pink brains, and that's pushing it. I mean, I like the idea of a tummy that thinks, but I thought they were much better as
Turtles.
Have you read the original comics? Because the original Ultron aliens.
I'm pretty sure it all makes more sense. I leafed through them in comic shops, and comic shops were 80s new age.
Turtles is great
thing too. Yeah,
because it goes off the wall very quickly. The Turtles comic.
Always has.
Great. But
so the biggest surprise of the 80s. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. So 1984, the comic comes out. And it sits there for a little while. There's definitely an underground movement following them. And in fact, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing game predates the Turtles cartoon. So what is it? Kevin Ciambetta, written by Eric Woodchick, or whatever his name is. Sorry. Mispronunciation of names. Sorry, apologies. But the role-playing game came out. My friends were playing that role-playing game before the Turtles were
a thing. We were there before it got cool.
Humanoid mutant animals and stuff like
Absolutely.
that. It's great. Yeah. And they were ninjas, and of course they were censored in some places, while the Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles, because ninja is an offensive word.
It's like satanic panics, really.
Yeah. If we use the word ninja, the kids will try and emulate them, despite the fact that they're carrying in the show ninja weapons. But
Plus,
the
Gapane. Oh my god!
The cartoon came out, and everything, and I think everything for the last 30 years, like you can't go past a toy shelf without Turtle stuff on it. Now, like Turtles has been through like 6 reiterations. There's a new reboot coming. The movie the recent movie spawned a new animated series, despite the fact that
the
Rise
paint
of
had
the
barely
Ninja-
dried on the previous one. Yeah,
like, and each Ninja Turtle series reinvigorates it essentially. They redo stuff, they change it up.
Each one is interchangeable. No, each one is individual. I mean, and it's like, imagine, the first one's done by Rembrandt, and the second one is done by Mobius, and the third one's done by Stan Lee. You could watch the same story over and over again, and the fact that it's done so differently each time, is what makes it work. I love it. As an idea, I'm not a turtle guy myself.
And the 3.5 one is done by Seban.
Good God! Wow.
Yes.
I think there's 5 or 6 different toy companies releasing turtle action figures at this moment in time. You've got Hire, you've got Playmates, you've got NECA, you've got Super 7, and
each based off a different version of the franchise or a movie.
No, there's like NECA's delving into both. You've got NECA's doing comic line and a movie line, plus things like releasing a 4 set of the Christmas special and live action Christmas special and stuff like that. They're not necessarily all doing their own thing, but some are. Higher Toys is doing,
and the comics have been reinvigorated as well. Like when IDW took over from whoever had them first. Got to remember the names. They
couldn't place it.
But IDW running the Turtles line, and they have for a while now. And you get
the last storyline really sort of did a lot to reinterest people in it as well.
Interestingly enough, that's a Teenage Mutant Ninjas role-playing thing as well. Like the role-playing game released a supplement which was post-apocalyptic. And included in that is a mini comic of an old age Michelangelo coping with the death of his brothers and training up new young ninjas. So.
I saw the animated. They actually made a cartoon version of that in the last series that they were building or making. It looked like special episodes or something. It was like Mad Max more than the Turtles.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
Very cool.
It was actually quite interesting. I was kind of like, oh, what's this? Genuinely surprised.
I suppose where the Turtles as a franchise appeal to me is just a little bit weird and offbeat. I never was into the cartoon. Like the cartoon was there, but I already was embedded in that Teenage Mutant Ninja fandom, and then the cartoon came out, and then a whole bunch of kids were into it as well. And, there was more Turtles fans, and everyone knew then what I was talking about. So it was a weird occurrence.
It's the closest American cartoon culture got to doing a 2000 AD of their own. Because the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles really did feel like it had that kind of 2000 AD vibe. It's kind of slightly edgy.
It definitely goes a little bit sillier.
Yeah. Oh, definitely does that. Especially when Henson gets to it.
Especially when the turtles go to space. Like,
we all had to do that. It's post-Star Wars.
Cool. Okay, so in terms of the toys and marketing, there's lots of stuff going on there. But we should lean towards wrapping it up.
Sorry, looking at the time and oh boy. Yeah, we got chatty.
We did.
It's good chin wag.
Yes. Any final notes? Like what? Okay. As the final note, what's the collection from that time period that you either really wanted, you have, or
God. I'm not very good for that because the collection from the 80s that I want and I'm starting to collect is literally the old June line. I know it's weird. I say that as a collector of both Transformers and
Oh God, they had one, didn't they? Oh, geez.
doing those in modern iterations.
Paul Atreides, anyone? Yeah.
Yeah, I've got
No.
Paul. Like I just need to get Baron Stilgar
Harkonnen?
and Baron Harkonnen, Stilgar,
That's
and
Guild Navigator, maybe
no,
comes in a fish tank.
The
DeVries.
Well,
it's Seneca's the last one.
It's hard for me. Like most of my stuff sits in. Like I've got some Transformers, and I've definitely got some She-Ra stuff. But most of my merch is in my Powerpuff Girls collection. So, yay!
A decade later, essentially.
Yeah. So talking 90s merch, but
90s merch we'll discuss later, and
I'm sure we could go on forever, and
Totally.
you could definitely describe the impact of things like liquid television and the cable cartoon networks. And
True.
Let's face it, we're still in this gig because of those things, I think.
Yeah.
Well, they do pay for what we do, essentially.
Absolutely. I guess not being a fan of any of these toy lines, really, but I mean, I'm a big fan of the idea of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and I can certainly appreciate them. After living through the 80s, I suppose, the two franchises that really stand out as being emblematic and iconic of that era, that's sort of sum it all up, would have to be Masters of the Universe and the Transformers, I think. I think for me, they sort of sum it all up in the sense that it kind of is like a little microcosm of the trends that were happening during that decade and how it sort of affected us afterwards, and how animation changed and how merchandising changed animation quite profoundly.
Okay, so what is the fallout from that? What if you had to look at 3 things for fallout? What would you say?
I guess my thing would be the concept of the franchise is kind of being born and is wobbling around on its little Bambi feet, falling over occasionally. It hasn't done the first Pokemon yet, where it becomes almost indestructible. I guess the other thing would be it's no longer just animation for animation's sake. It's animation and merch has merged, where if you're going to make any kind of thing now, like a story or an animation, it'd be highly unusual if you were actually not thinking about stuff around it, like merchandising and marketing. It's like so integral to it in a capitalist world. It's just ridiculous. So that would be the other thing I would take out of that. So what you see is some dingbat like myself making an old film out of nowhere to live and breathe on its own is just anachronistic. You would not do that without thinking about merch and t-shirts and spin-offs and games and stuff like that.
The toxic adult fan, I think, is the big thing to get.
Well, that's a couple of decades later now, isn't it?
But
you're right. That's definitely it.
But that's their origins. It's like, it's really hard because I do love some of this stuff, and it is my time period. I really, really grapple with the idea of that. The cartoons and TV series that I used to watch are some sort of standout, amazing thing. Yes, I really enjoyed them. Yes, I'm nostalgic about them, but they were bad. They were poorly made. They were not. Yeah, and you get these like the animated Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is terrible.
Yeah,
but it's been improved recently.
Yeah,
the recent ones have actually been quite entertaining and quite good.
Nickelodeon's 2012 series is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah.
But toxic fandom. I mean, this is if you're talking toxic fandoms, do you remember that PD we did at TAFE, Tanya, where we had a lecture from a demographer, and he was describing the age groups that we should be marketing our courses to. Mm-hmm. And the thing that made us all fall off our chair was that he was talking about kids. Then he talked about adolescents, and without even breaking a blink or any sense of trace of irony, he casually described adolescents as being a demographic between the ages of 10 and 40. And that was about 10 years ago. And so essentially, when you're talking about 40-year-old fans or toxic adult fans, essentially what you're talking about is this adolescent. Well, in the 90s, they were called man children. These are people that just didn't seem to grow up or mature. I guess you'd call them incels these days. But they were essentially angry, reactionary, defensive would be a good word.
Yeah, I kind of
they segue seamlessly into that politics of resentment or something.
It's why I quit. It's why I quit the Ghostbusters fandom, actually. So
yeah, well, God, that
because I was big involved in that. So
it's like
it's weird though. It's that Gen X, 40 at the age of 10 and 10 at the age of 40. It's kind of
weird.
Just stayed that way.
I haven't got my head around it either. Because I remember a lot of this, some of this stuff, like the 2000 AD stuff coming out of Britain, was very subversive and had irony and satire firmly tongue in cheek. And now I'm seeing Trump supporters carrying on like Warhammer, some kind of far right thing. It's like, what?
It is.
It's a parody of far right stuff.
There's a lot of irony there, and it's no one's the good guys.
No, that's right. It's the evil that men do. It's like we like to play toy soldiers, but we totally understand what it represents. Something quite odious and militaristic and colonial. So we'll just make talking lizards out of it and make it into a sci-fi silly thing. Okay, now it's palatable. And then you suddenly realize there's people out there taking it literally as some kind of true thing that we should all be aspiring to. It's like, back away. Take the sharp objects away from the kids. It's getting nasty.
I guess from my perspective, what I'd take out of it is it did help promote foreign animation studios. Toei coming up so many times, Dick coming up so many times. It was a lot of outsourcing, but it also, I'm not saying it's the first time because obviously you've got things like Gigantor, Space, Star Blazers, Battle of the Planets coming through in like are we going to the 50s for Gigantor or is it 60s? That's pretty close.
60s for Gigantor.
Thank you.
Early 60s maybe.
Gigantor.
60s and 70s, it's there, but it becomes more prominent, more palatable, I guess, during the 80s, and helps people seek out later, larger, more adult 80s animations which come out.
But there's definitely a demographic of person out there that doesn't seem to take the differentiation between fact and fiction very seriously.
No, that's
And I wonder if that's part of it. See, for me, this feels like one of the aftermaths of Star Wars, where for about 20 or 30 years, just about every major Hollywood film became not so much infantile, it became adolescent.
You saw those.
They were no longer naturalistic heroes. They were all cartoon characters that were big, beefy buffoons or some kind of fantasy character.
Is solely to blame for that.
No.
I think Star Wars, Jaws, Close Encounters, those big summer blockbusters, all coming out in that one stage, definitely tilted the late 70s, early 80s, or late 70s and 80s and onwards.
Culturally, you've got a very immature thing happening. Yeah. And so when you see the whole hero's journey, it's about, the hero's journey I've heard uncharitably described as a way a dominant culture trains young men to become expendable drones in warfare for an era that doesn't really exist anymore, and they're kind of lost without it.
It makes sense.
And it's like, what's the phrase? Culture is not your friend. It's a recruiting tool.
Yeah, let's face it.
A classic example of it.
The original legends are certainly there to help fire up a citizen militia. Back in Greek times, Roman times.
Take a kill for the team. So a lot of that is a bit to do. And so
we're going to start talking about the action figures the Romans made of the gladiators. Yeah.
Well, they're a lot more realistic than say He-Man, for example.
Do you like
he's the proverbial condom full of walnuts, isn't he?
Based on Conan, so yes, he is. But they couldn't get the rights to Conan, although Conan again, one of those R-rated properties that was turned into a toy and a cartoon
It's,
line.
like I say,
Yeah.
there's some really weird streams and threads running through the 80s. And like I say, I spent most of my time living in the other 80s. So even though I described the mainstream 80s and it sounds absolutely terrible to the 21st century, we had a lot of fun in the 80s because we were into things like Warhammer and, well, not Warhammer specifically, but you know, the D&D and the computer games, all that was emerging for the first time. And that was crazy exciting times. And at the same time, there's all this other stuff going on around. You know, a lot of people I knew, being arty film students and stuff, tended to reject a lot of that mainstream stuff as bullshit. And we focus on the independent stuff. So
I just realized
watching all that stuff being remade by Michael Bay in 20 years, 30 years later, and all this nostalgia for this mainstream stuff that a lot of people just thought was boring and dull.
we didn't talk about the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon.
Oh, look, there's a whole thing you could do on that too.
Okay, but
you
let's
know,
not, and let's
let's wind this up. Like I say,
Yeah.
we could keep yapping on forever.
But yes, sure,
It's a
the
great topic.
conversation can continue in the chat below.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
So let's
Well, I've had fun.
like, it's intense. I think it's our most serious episode.
It's so weird, but you're right.
It's like an iceberg. Don't get sidetracked by the fact that toys seem stupid and trivial, because they're not.
Yeah.
They're significant, I should say. And they're emblematic of other things.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Otherwise, they wouldn't have the significance with those toxic fandoms, would they?
Oh. Yeah, there's a fetishistic aspect to them, yeah. Certainly.
Yes. We could talk about sexualized Pokemon online for hours.
Oh,
let's wrap it up.
Sorry, kids.
Totems and a sex toy.
Oh, geez.
Oh,
Was it Paris Felicio, or
we
was
need
it
Okay, I'm ending the stream right now. See you later, everyone.
See ya.
See you, everyone.